Today we're going to talk about microorganisms. How do you read them? How do you sense them? How do you interact with them? And we're going to start with the issues of pasteurization. If someone were to offer you 2 different glasses of orange juice, and for the first one they said, it had an infection, but don't worry, we pasteurized it, so it's good to drink now. And the second glass of orange juice just came from healthy oranges. Which one would you choose? The first one doesn't sound very appealing, does it? Pasteurization has its uses, but mainly if you're in a famine and you have no choice but to make your food last as long as possible or to eat food that's older. You'd think if microbiology was so advanced, you'd be able to support the microbiomes of your food sources, your crops, your fruits, your farm animals, rather than trying to sanitize everything. The reason why we need preservatives in our food is because we've pasteurized it. When you pasteurize it, you create an uninhabited environment, which means any kind of microbe can infect that food source, so you use preservatives to slow that growth down. Pasteurization does not give food a longer shelf life. It actually shortens the shelf life because it's no longer being protected by something. It's unoccupied. The only reason why it can have a long shelf life is when you add preservatives. Most food, by the time it's on grocery store shelves, has been stored upwards of 4 to 12 months. The more that we use pasteurization, pesticides, GMO, preservatives, the more that the animals and plants aren't able to develop their immune systems and microbiomes to defend against natural predators and natural microbes. All this does is build up to a critical mass where a fungal or bacterial species will wipe out that entire plant or fruit species, such as what's happened with certain bananas. Because we don't allow these crops and animals to adapt, we try to keep them sanitized. And this has to do with the view that all microbes are germs. And this just isn't true. Microbes are more than germs. They're more than possible pathogens or diseases that they may cause. In the same way, food is more than just calories, but we only see that as calories because we've taken the soul out of food. We've taken the microbes out of them. And now scientists are looking to genetically modify microbiomes of things like crops in order to protect them, which is going to have untold effects down the road. And it's not like pasteurization works that well. There's upwards of 50 million pounds of food every year that gets recalled for different outbreaks and infections. So it doesn't work in the long term, and it barely works in the short term. On top of this, preservatives destroy your microbiome because that's what they're made for. They're made to stop the growth of microorganisms. And then we're not introducing microbes because our food doesn't contain any. Before we got obsessed with cleansing and pasteurization and sanitization, you had to be able to sense and read the microbial. And one of the ways you do this is through your nose. Humans have one of the strongest noses in the world. They can detect up to 1 trillion different odors, and you can memorize close to 100,000 of them if you really try. The nose works by physically receiving particles in the air. So in terms of food, if your food never has microorganisms, you never learn how to detect which ones are there. So you'd be able to tell if something has spoiled or something has an infection or gone bad. Of course, you can also learn to detect it with your eyes by seeing the texture or the color, seeing if it's off or the consistency is wrong. And those are just ways you can tell if there's been microbial activity. This also applies to your house and other environments, being able to detect and feel the microbiome of these places because everything's giving off a scent, everything's giving off an odor. There's a sense of accomplishment, a sense of fulfilling when you're engaging with your environment, with the undercurrents and overcurrents of everything around you and being able to accurately deduce information. Kind of like when you're able to name a plant species or a bird species or an insect species, or even seeing the tracks of an animal and being able to tell where it's going, what it's doing, and what animal it is. The same goes for microorganisms. You're able to read the signs, the tracks, and the omens that they leave behind. They all have their own stories, and when you learn of these stories, you participate in them. The folklore and fairy tales and folk creatures of every single culture in the world are part of how people have interacted with the microbial and the stories that come from that. It's about reading and understanding the personality and aspiration and intentions of microbes and how they move through and become part of every living organism and every object. They are what animate everything in the world, from people to homes to objects to food to the land itself to ecosystems. I don't understand what the goal of pasteurization is. If you get rid of all the microbes in the world, you would collapse the biosphere and everything would die. Microorganisms are a part of life. They're what give everything a soul. The kind of famine we have is not a caloric famine, but it's a microbial famine. A diet of just fast food can destroy about half of your microbial diversity in 2 weeks. East Asian people tend to have very clear skin and very good body odor. Well, look at their diet. They eat fermented foods with almost every single meal. People will say, well, they have a genetic mutation. Maybe they do, but who do you think handles your genes? It's your microbiome. Body odor comes from microorganisms on your skin microbiome that are digesting various chemicals that are released through your skin. Deodorant just has the same mindset as pasteurization. If you just keep covering things up, if you just keep cleansing everything, you don't have to worry about any of the negative effects of it. But all that tells me is you're hiding the negative rather than supporting the positive. And the same thing for showers. If you shower once or twice a day, you're never going to build up a skin microbiome because you keep destroying it. Then your skin is uninhabited and other kinds of microbes are going to move in, and that's what's going to cause you to have bad odor, which means you put deodorant on, and then that causes you to need to shower. I'm not saying never shower, never pasteurize any food. What I'm saying is that you can learn how to read the signs and the tracks and the omens of these microorganisms to tell when you should or shouldn't need to. If your skin looks nice and it's clear and you smell good, you don't need to shower. You're just going to ruin the good that you have going on. And again, the same is with food. If it looks good and smells good and tastes good, then there's no reason to cleanse it. But we lose touch with that intuition and instinct when we're never exposed and never learn how to read those signs and tracks. So if you want to learn how to do this, read the folk tales and the fairy tales of different cultures, or maybe the culture you come from, and you'll start to see how they think and how it all applies to your interaction with those overcurrents and undercurrents and the microbial world around you. And how food is more than calories, and microbes are more than just germs. But they're an animating force. They have personality and characteristics and anthropomorphizations. They're spirits and entities and folk creatures, even ancestors and gods. And finally, we have dreams, which are probably your most direct interpretation of microorganisms. Because there's billions of subconscious processes that go on and around your body that make it to your brain, but just don't get forwarded to conscious attention. There's around 100 trillion microorganisms in you, all interacting with each other and with you, your immune system, your nervous system, your gut, your skin, your eyes, your mouth, everything. That information doesn't just get lost to the void, but can be processed and interpreted through things like instinct and intuition, but also especially with dreams and the omens and signs dreams leave behind. Microbiology is limited because microorganisms don't live in a test tube, and they're more than germs, and they're more than our characterization of them as a microscopic organism. Maybe if there's interest, I can read through some folklore or fairy tales and kind of explain what I mean more directly with examples. But that's it for this video. Thanks for watching.